Hi, and welcome to this final video on CSVkit. We've learned quite a lot about handling CSV files, like selecting columns, searching through them, sorting, looking at statistics, and so on. In this final video, I just want to mention one way that you can essentially take CSV files to another format. And as you can see here on the documentation page, there are essentially several topics undergoing elsewhere with your data. For instance, we have CSVJSON, which is the one I'm going to talk about. We also have CSVpy. This is essentially a command that once you apply it to a CSV function, gets you into a kind of interactive Python terminal here, where it says that, yeah, this data.csv, the file you had, has been loaded into a reader object named reader. So now we can essentially apply usual Python to it, like converting it to a list, taking the length and printing that out. Then of course you can exit it afterwards. Although I think this is pretty cool for a very quick look at the data, I'll also just be honest and say that if you really want to take a more in-depth look at data, maybe do some machine learning, then you don't really just want to have it in an interactive terminal. You actually want to import the CSV file into a Python script. So then I wouldn't really use the csvpy command. I'll just use some other Python code to get my CSV file essentially into Python. And finally, there is a command called csvformat, which is for legacy systems. If you're dealing with legacy systems, then this is definitely nice to know, but I suspect that most of you who are watching this don't. So I will simply skip talking about this, and you can just look here if you need to know more about it. So for this video, I'll just talk about this CSVJSON command, which is used to convert CSV data to JSON data. And before we try it out, the reason I think this is really useful is that JSON is a data format that is really useful on the web. So you can essentially see some JSON. It's not surprising that this is useful on the web, since JSON really stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and JavaScript is of course used all over the web. Hence, JSON is really useful for web development, but of course also if you're dealing with APIs like REST APIs, then JSON is also incredibly common as a format, so it's very useful to be able to go from CSV to JSON format. So again, I'm in my terminal here. I have our typical Excel file, and I also have these bike files from previously. So let's first of all just take CSVJSON and look at its help page. As usual. So you can see the short description is that it converts a CSV file into a JSON file, or something called a GeoJSON file. I don't want to talk about this because this is slightly less common. I'll just focus on the typical conversion from CSV file into usual JSON. It should accept one argument, which is the CSV file to operate it on, or you can pipe it in as an input through standard in, as we've seen many times previously. There are many optional arguments here. I'll only use one of them, which is indent, but let's just get on with using it in the default way. Okay, so let's try it out. We have CSVJSON, and I can use it, for instance, on bikes1.csv. And here you can see that we get this nice JSON file just printed to the output. Here we have sold bikes, 17, and we have average price, 339. You can see here that there is some kind of type conversion. You get 17.0 and 339.0, so this is essentially converted to some kind of floating point number, while here you get this nice quotes over sold bikes and average price. These are essentially, in a sense, keys. So if you're not used to JSON that much, you can essentially think of them as Python dictionaries in a slightly simplified way. So let's try a slightly more difficult example. So let's take into CSV, our favorite file here, and pass this into head, just to take a look at it. It is of course quite a lot of fields. Let's just grab the county column here and maybe the quantity. And we can use CSVcut with the columns county and quantity. Now of course we get a lot of them. Let's again just use head. The quantity here in the Adams and Buffalo county is not really that interesting, so maybe let's look here at whole. Here we have lots of different numbers. So then instead of head, let's do csvgrep. I want to look at the column county, and I'm looking for the match of whole. Good. And what we might then finally do is to convert this into a JSON file. So now we can use CSVJSON, essentially accepting this file as standard in. And now here is our file. And you can see here that we get county whole, quantity 1, county whole, quantity 1. All of these, here you can see some variation, county whole, quantity 25, and so on. This might be very hard to understand what this is really about, because this one here and essentially this one is completely similar. Maybe when we're selecting these columns, we should also try to do ship date. And here you can see the end JSON result. So now we have county, whole, quantity 1, and ship date, a specific date. This is the way to get JSON out of CSV files. And essentially, as you can see, we started with an Excel file, and now we have a lot of choice whether we want to just end up as a CSV file or convert it to a JSON file. Finally, one thing you can pass in as an optional argument is indent. And let's do 4. And now you can see that it's a lot clearer indented here for you. You don't really need this when you're saving the file, if you're just passing it to an API or just using it for transferring data. But if you're just wanting to view the file, then this is really, really convenient. So that's really it. This marks the end of this course on CSVkit. I hope you found it useful. If you like the content me and Steen are providing here, then I would be super grateful if you'd like the video and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon for more cool videos. Thanks and have a nice day.